afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Pebbles Beach, where we're going to hear more of Sheila Weaver's poetry. And a lot have been inspired over the years, where you've lived on the coast and who you've met. So here in nature, I think you've been inspired by nature a lot too. We're looking forward to hearing your poems. Over to you.
Thank you. Last year, when we had to start shutting down and isolating and staying home, a lot of people took up gardening, one of the positive results of COVID. And so I thought that might be an appropriate theme, and I'll begin with a song. If I had a garden. If I could have a garden, you know what I would do? I'd fill it up with hyacinths and poppies and forget-me-nots, and daffodils and roses and fragrances for noses, tomatoes, sage and marigolds, and butterflies and bees. I'd have hazelnuts with catkins and shiny berried holly trees, and crocuses and cucumbers and bushes that have sticky buds. I'd want cherry trees and apple trees and snakes and birds and bumblebees and pumpkins, ants and spider webs and plants with popping seeds. I'd leave lots of room for birds to nest and frogs to hide and great big weeds, for corn and beans and cabbages and toadstools and wild strawberries. There'd be a pond and lots of rocks and soft green grass and hollyhocks and sunny banks and shady nooks and carrots in a row. Oh, I would grow a garden that welcomes in the wild and free, where children find shy violets, tall sunflowers and ladybugs, one filled with song and sweet perfume, where melting snow sings winter's rune, where earth is fragrant, dark and deep, and beauty makes hearts glow. When Father takes his spade to dig, then Robin comes along. He sits upon a little twig and sings a little song. I wrote that when I was 8, and I wrote hardly any for a long year after that, but it does show that one can start writing poetry at any age. And of course, we're not the only beings who need to eat. Caterpillar. Caterpillar munching there, what do you find so tasty? It's past its prime, the worse for wear. But I must not be hasty, for you like foods that I like not. So I don't need to worry that you might rob my dinner pot to feed yourself so furry. A worm in my broccoli. A worm in my broccoli, wriggly and green. Say, were there any I ate unseen? He's ever so tiny and broccoli green. It's the worms I feel sorry for, not for me, if I ate any, even just 1, 2, or 3. For they would be dead, but they wouldn't hurt me. But why are there worms on the broccoli, pray? Isn't there something I ought to spray? If the plants are healthy, worms will be few. A very old truth that we're learning anew. So worms on my broccoli's quite all right, and I don't go and hunt them by day or night. A worm in my broccoli, wriggly and green. Say, were there any I ate unseen? He's ever so tiny and broccoli green. Cattle. Cattle in shadeless grass beneath shadeless prairie skies. At least their tails are long to swish at flies. Just to endure, they must be surpassing wise. Beside a roaring road or choked with dust, no choice, and all of this for serving us. When I first came to the Sunshine Coast, I lived on Gambier Island. I had the good fortune to stay there for 12 years. I was near the ferry, but for decades there have been 3 church camps around the periphery of the island, far from the ferry, far from roads. And so you had to arrange for your own supplies, and you had to plan well ahead. This little piece is a result of an anecdote someone told me about one of those camps. Serendipity. Food for the camp must be ordered for a month. The spring cleanup crew, 8 hard-working men, 8 days. When they have gone, there are 2 potatoes left. This one resulted from a piece I heard on As It Happens on CBC Radio in November of 1998. A life-size sculpture of an elephant made from an impression taken from a living animal was put on display at a United Nations site, I think. Someone was shocked by its penis, which, being an elephant's, was quite large, and screened the offending organ with trees. And I couldn't resist. Elephant art. Acceptable art includes no private part. This is the current decree. For the leaf of a fig, this organ's too big, so instead it's been hid by a tree. Whom does it offend? And where will this end? Or my goodness, what next will I see? Plants also need to have sex before seed. How many fig leaves for a tree? I sent this to As It Happens, and they played it a couple of nights later. And that's a segue maybe into a shift in topics to points of view. And that is also the title of this piece. Far from shore, winding, curling, silent, the tide seeps in, gently lifting the prostrate grasses, stirring the sand. Long I kneel, watching. A fellow explorer comes near. Is anything wrong? She says. Snake, did you shed your skin in my garden? Or am I picking peas in yours? And the next is from a very small rural community that I used to spend a bit of time in northeast Washington, looking after a friend's cats off the grid. Grace. Tethered to her oxygen supply, Lou still tends the tiny post office. Just a kid from a small coal town, not very bright, she says. Who'd ever have thought I'd see the Sistine Chapel? Eyes sparkle, hands rise unconsciously toward the sky. Across the river on the gravel road, a car stands motionless. I stop. I just saw a baby deer that could barely walk, its legs all wobbly. The woman's husky voice is hushed, cigarette unheeded, careworn face transformed with light. Gray rocks. Old gray rocks. Is it you whose voice I hear singing with the waves at high tide? You, round rocks who form the bed of the mountain river, rushing headlong, singing to the sea. Is the river song your song too? Or you in the shadowy forest where the cedar root grows in a long, slow curve around you? And you in the frozen north, in your ancient lichen coat, snow-hid, still timeless rocks, are you singing too? Is the roar of avalanche your song, and the echo of marmot's high, clear call that rings through the mountain air? And you, do you sing in the blazing desert sun where the lizard at noonday seeks your gift of shade, but for you there is no place to hide? And when in the desert sunset you glow like burning embers in the sun's great fire, O ancient ones, are you singing then? My last piece, Salmon. On the wooded bank, light, pliant bones and sharp-toothed jaw. To salmon, is the river swift and cold and beautiful, or simply home?
Thank you very much, Sheila. Oh my goodness. Those last two poems, they just evoke the feeling of being among the nature and the nature among us. And I thank you so much for your future. Bye for now.